Hello and welcome to, I think it's proper to say the social distancing, the talk with Tariro. On the program today, I'm sure you can actually see that we are making an effort. COVID has hit the world hard. We have now surpassed about 3 million new infections globally. And Southern Africa, it's slowly coming in, slowly creeping in, and a number of challenges we have faced them. So yes, work has to continue going on. We know here in Zimbabwe, the president is told us that we've moved on to level 2, which means we can start doing work, but we need to ensure that we still continue doing the work in a safer way. So you can see that me and my guest, we are actually adhering to the social distancing rules, and the talk crew, they have their gloves, they've got their masks as prescribed, and really making sure that, yes, we are giving you the programs, but at the same time, doing them in a safer way. On the program today, I have Rumbidzai Zimbudzi. There's an issue, a major challenge that we are facing as a country, with particularly the lockdown that has happened. We are looking at the issue of sexual gender-based violence in this era of COVID-19, where movements have been restricted. Rumbidzai Zimudzi is a sexual reproductive health rights NESA officer with the Adult Rep Clinic. They've been dealing with these issues. They are here to help us as women. And most of the times we are thinking, is it the end of the world? And I'm going to hear from Rumbi, is it just women who are abused, or we even have men who are also facing abuse? Rumbi, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Tari.
Yes,
how are you, viewers?
I'm good. What we want to hear is how is the situation when we are talking about sexual gender-based violence? How is the situation in Zimbabwe at the moment?
Unfortunately, in as much as it's good that people need to stay home so that we maintain this COVID-19 and that it doesn't spread, being stuck at home for most women and girls, and even the men, has come at an expense whereby they are now being abused because some of them are actually in lockdown with the perpetrators. Mm-hmm. So sadly, COVID-19 in terms of sexual and gender-based violence has really impacted a lot, in the sense that the cases of women being abused has actually increased. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What are the cases that are there? Could you give us a ball-to-ball situation in terms of how is it prevailing? What are the cases that you are witnessing? What exactly is happening at community level?
Okay, so we have a situation whereby there are some women and girls who used to, when people were not restricted to their homes, they would at least maybe in the morning leave to go to work, then come back home later on in the evening. Or maybe the perpetrator is someone who used to work somewhere else and who would come back. You know, some husbands will come back at the month end or something. Mm-hmm. But now that husband or uncle or brother who is the perpetrator is now in the house. And because there's not much to do, the perpetrator now has access to the young girl or to the wife, in case it's a husband and a wife situation. Mm-hmm. So people are being abused in the homes. And unfortunately, because there's restriction to then travel to go to the nearest police station or to come to the nearest clinic, women and girls and the men who are being abused are suffering in their homes. Mm-hmm. And sadly, some of these people do not actually know that they can access services. And also some of these services, the restrictions are brought by whereby a week or so ago, we had a young lady who needed to seek access, but when she got to a police roadblock, she then failed to get the police officers to believe her story, whereby she told them she wanted to seek service. And the issue in itself, whereby she wanted to say she had been raped, is not something she was free to talk about. I think you can also acknowledge the fact that some of these issues are intimate. Yes. It's not something you want to tell anyone. So she was sent back home. And unfortunately for this young lady, she was bleeding. So she bled to an extent whereby we then initially had to intervene with the Population Services Zimbabwe. She was picked up, and long story short, she ended up in hospital having been very ill and also needed a blood transfusion. She had bled out that much whilst at home, and also having failed to access services when there was time enough to have helped her better.
Yeah, there you have talked about the issue of one form of abuse, which is the issue of rape that women, young girls, are being exposed to. What other forms of sexual gender-based violence have you witnessed so far? Because here what we would also want to do is to enlighten women to know that when you're experiencing this, particularly during this COVID era, when this happens to you, it's actually a form of abuse. But it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. There is somewhere where you can go. There are partners who can actually assist you so that at least you cope with the situation.
Okay, so when we talk of sexual and gender-based violence, I think you appreciate that there are many forms. So this can be emotional. Gender-based violence can be physical, whereby some women are actually being beaten up. And in these days, it's stories whereby there's nothing in the home to eat. The husband has not been going to work. The wife herself maybe has not been going to work. And some people have lost their jobs. Some are on half salaries. And that in itself is causing problems. So when the wife now asks the husband for money to buy bread, this woman gets beaten up. Or sometimes just not even being given the money to buy. Let's say maybe this husband does have some money saved away somewhere. So all these issues surrounding what women are experiencing in the homes, whether it's emotional, it's physical, it's economical, they're all forms of abuse that women and girls and even the men are faced with, because we can't leave the men and then say they're also not abused. We need to appreciate that in as much as they may not be as many as the women that are abused, we actually do have men that are abused. So there's also intimate partner violence. That is, I know, as discussion people don't want to have because they don't want to believe their husband and their wife can, especially in terms of rape. But with gender-based violence, so all that, there's some women that are pregnant and they're also being beaten up by their partners because now they're asking maybe to say, can I have this money to buy this for preparation? So there's a lot of forms of abuse happening in the homes as we speak.
Yes. And related to that, I would want to know the number of challenges. What are the challenges that women are facing when they're experiencing this form of abuse? You've talked about the issue of when they want to access services, the issue of the roadblocks. What other challenges are the women facing now to then say, this is a way for me to cope with the abuse that I'm facing, to even overcome the abuse that I'm facing?
Okay, so with some of the women, the abuse is something that's maybe it's not physical, maybe it's not sexual, maybe they're just emotional abuse and they need to talk to someone. So the fact that maybe they usually used to go to the neighbor next door, but now because we're advising people to stay in their homes, that neighbor who was their ear to listen to or their shoulder to cry on is not there anymore. So what we're saying in terms of the service that are being provided at the adult rape clinic, and I'm sure with our other partners, women can call and talk to someone. We've got psychologists who are readily available, and we've got nurse counselors who can be reached out over the phone, and then at least you let out whatever you're thinking or feeling to someone, and then you can get help. Yes.
Well, you can hear it from Rumbi. Yes, there are challenges that we are facing. Yes, there are challenges that men and women are facing, particularly during this era where COVID is there, and we are all being advised to say, can we stay at home? Stay at home so that we can contain the spread of COVID-19. But as much as we are staying at home, you know, sometimes we tend to then get used to each other. You are bored by the next person. Abuse then happens because you are confined in that particular environment. So this is where we are saying there is somewhere where you can go. In the upcoming episode, we're really going to ensure that we try and assist in knowing what are these places that women can go to. Yes, COVID-19 has come in and it has a number of challenges, and sexual gender-based violence is one of those challenges. Join us after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion. On the program today, I have Rumbidzai Zimudzi. And the issue that we are dealing with is, yes, we have COVID-19, but it has come with a plethora of challenges, sexual gender-based violence being one of them. And we are really looking at the situation that is prevailing at the moment in our country. Rumbi, I would want you to touch more on the restrictions that women and even men are then faced with when they want to access services.
Okay. So I think you'll appreciate that when essential services were talked about during the lockdown, it was probably just to do with a woman can go and buy groceries, and this is within the 5 kilometers. But then there were issues that were left out, issues of accessing family planning, for instance. So the 5-kilometer radius might not be a place where a woman then needs that service. Maybe the family planning service is outside that 5 kilometers. So you find this woman is then sent back home. This then results in, at the end of the COVID-19, we're afraid we're going to have a lot of unwanted and unplanned pregnancies. Mm-hmm. And with that comes even the issue of then these unplanned pregnancies having to end up being unsafe abortions. So it's like a whole what can I say? It's like a whole problem that we're going to have at the end of it if we don't handle it now within this period and realize that such services are essential. There's also even the issue of access to menstrual, for pads, for girls, menstrual hygiene issues. We cannot leave these behind because whatever happens, even if there is lockdown, even if there's COVID-19, a girl or a young woman will still go on to their period at the end of every month or however their menstrual cycle is. So there's need to also maybe for the people that are in positions to make known or to make a provision that such services can be essential services. Yes, especially the sexual and reproductive health services, at least if they can be noted to be essential services, that women are allowed to go and access these services.
You know, when you are talking, as you were alluding to all these issues, I'm also seeing a major challenge where even with issues of HIV, where we have even women wanting to access, and even men wanting to access services like issue of condom use protection. There are centers where people used to go to access those. And now what it means is people are going to be indulging without protection. Yes. Is that a challenge that you have also witnessed in your work?
It's a huge challenge. We obviously can't always be saying things that are maybe on the negative side. For some women or men who have access to, like if you've got a record to show that your clinic dated an HIV or an opportunistic infection clinic, some of the police were allowing people to go to access and get their drugs for HIV. But what about the woman who maybe realizes or needs an HIV test because they've had an unprotected sexual encounter? So those women are maybe what we then need to appreciate, to say that lack of service, those restrictions impact, yes, very greatly, especially on issues on HIV and AIDS. And the condoms which were put in place before COVID-19, I'm sure if they were in places, some of them used to be in beer halls, which are closed now. Some of them used to be in schools or colleges. Those places are closed, yes. So definitely the places where people used to access condoms are not there anymore. And then the restriction comes in. I'm sure if you had to get to a police station and tell the policeman, I'm going to look for condoms, you're definitely going to be sent back home because to them, it's not an essential service. But they're not looking at the bigger picture.
There's one issue, particularly when we are looking at high density areas and even some informal settlements, the issue of access to water and the violence that also happens there. Could you enlighten us on that one?
Okay, so the other thing that we need to talk about in terms of COVID-19 and the issues about where abuse is coming in, we're also getting, because we had said women, we appreciate that women, men and girls are in their homes, and some of them are not on a salary, like I said before. So this is resulting in a lot of sexual abuse brought about by transactional sex. Someone is then thinking, okay, this person has sugar, let me maybe just have sex with them. And then the same with these water holes and bowls. The last time I had some men or the younger boys who man these bowls will tell the young girls to say, you know what, I can sleep with you and then I can give you a bucket of water, or you can maybe come in front of the line, or you can get 2 buckets or 3 buckets. And even the times that people need to go and ferry water, they're going at 3 a.m., they're going at 2 a.m. This is not safe for the young girls. And usually it's young girls and young women who are going to ferry water. So you then find out that this in itself does go back to increasing issues of sexual and gender-based violence. And then this young woman or girl has no choice. They need to use the water. It's essential. But to get this water, you then have to maybe sleep with someone, or they'll say, let me touch your breast, or let me touch your buttocks. So all that really is something that we should think about and know that the cases of sexual and gender-based violence are on the increase. Yes.
And there is also an issue, particularly on maternal health, where women want to go. Say I'm pregnant first trimester, second trimester, but the issue of movements. And then you are also hearing that some hospitals are now saying it's becoming difficult. I know with a lot of doctors, you need to make a phone call to say, I want to come and see you. I've got this problem because of COVID-19. I think it's a prevention mechanism as well. Any challenges that you have faced where women want to deliver, want to access sexual and reproductive health services, but they are facing challenges?
Okay, so like you have said, for someone who's in their first trimester or second trimester, this is for pregnant women, sometimes the police will only take a woman who's heavily pregnant seriously and think, okay, this one is about to deliver. But then we have other problems that come with pregnancy. We have high blood pressures. We've got some women who already have a bad obstetric history, and the police cannot know all this information. In their mind, they're just thinking people want to move around. So already a lot of women who are pregnant are having problems because they cannot access. The restriction issue is really a huge issue. I don't know what can be done about it. I hope in time, because now we are not so sure when the lockdown will end, but I hope in time they'll really appreciate that in pregnancy, it's really about making sure that when someone tells you they're pregnant, can we at least listen to women and girls and let them have access to services? Yes.
Well, we need to ensure that women do access services. What we are hearing is yes, the restrictions are there. The restrictions have been put in place to ensure that they protect us from COVID-19 being infected. But at the same time, it's a crisis, yes. And sometimes it takes time for us to adequately prepare to ensure that every need and every concern is addressed. And one issue that is there is particularly for women who want to access sexual and reproductive health services. Accessing those services, it's proving to be a major challenge. In the next segment, we want to look at how best then can we address all this, because this is almost like a learning process. We are learning as we are going, and it's one thing that us as a country, we've embraced to say, yes, we continue modifying, engineering and re-engineering our strategies and our interventions. So yes, that's one challenge that we have. And I'm sure our policymakers watching this would also put this into consideration to ensure that women and men who need those services can access them easily. Join us after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion where today we are looking at the issue of COVID-19 being here, challenges of sexual and reproductive health that are being faced by women as well as men. Ruby, so yes, we have articulated all these challenges that women, men are facing with the lockdown, with the restrictions that are there. What would you propose should be the solutions? Let's say the president is watching, the other policymakers are watching, Ministry of Health is watching, all the ministries are watching, policymakers, even development partners who are willing to address, they are watching and they're saying, you are on the ground. What would you suggest we do to ensure that this is addressed?
I think the biggest ask is, can we please lift restrictions on access to sexual and reproductive health and rights services? Can women and men and young girls be allowed to go and access services? I think that is the biggest ask. And maybe the other issue is that as service providers and other key stakeholders in the programming of SRHR, can we maybe make people know that for those who are open, because maybe some women can actually get out of their homes, but they are not sure whether the clinics are open. So I know the adult rape clinic is open, I know Msasa is open, I know PSZ is open. So maybe on our part, we also they need to go out there and let the women know we're there for them and that they can come to us. Mm-hmm. But mostly for the government and the powers that be, can they allow access? Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, your biggest ask of saying allow and lift restrictions. We are human beings. Once I know this has been lifted, we always try and take advantage. And that we can't deny. Where people would then tend to, it's almost like we're in a Chisarira, and yes, it's been opened. So yeah, I'm actually going to be going out, and maybe I was at home. This is now my time to then go and see my boyfriend that I haven't seen in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. The challenge of people then taking advantage of that lenience that would have been put in. What can be done?
I think the onus now lies on the service providers to where someone says they are going to say maybe if it's a family planning clinic, can we then maybe give out a date or a review date that someone can then show to the police? But that in itself is different now because we talked about condoms. How then can someone give you a note to say your condoms? It's actually a very tricky question. I guess we then ask people who may be listening to this, or even just to ask among ourselves to say, can we then be honest enough to own, because we cannot run away from the fact that we need to protect ourselves. Yes. We need to protect the next person. You need to protect even the police, the nurses. If you're going to the hospital, you don't want to just be walking up and about. Yeah. So maybe we should then also ask individuals to only then not abuse this. If in fact all it's lifted and they're said, okay, you can go and get access, can people then maybe be responsible enough to realize that COVID-19 is still there? They still need to be safe, to wear their masks when they're going to this clinic, to wear their masks when they're going to buy the condoms or the pads. So maybe that's what it really boils down to. Yeah.
Is there a way, I was trying to really find out, because COVID-19 has really changed the way of us doing things. And I'm saying, is there a way of people accessing those services without having to leave my home? I know the perpetrator is with me at home, but sometimes I need counseling. Sometimes I need maybe some service to be done. Is there a way of maybe virtual assistance, all those things, where we are saying movement is not there, because still in the process of going there, I'm going to be interacting with the other people, and all the dynamics just are complicated in a way.
Okay. So what we've done is at the Adult Rape Clinic, I'll talk about where I'm coming from. So we've got peer educators that we have been working with, and these peer educators are young people that live in different places. So what we've done is, because they are in groups with their peers, we then disseminate through our information. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on WhatsApp, because this is where we realize people are during this lockdown. So we're going to them in the comfort of their homes and putting our messages out there on the social networks that they may be on. Yeah.
So I'm a woman at home, and I'm watching this program. I'm being abused. I'm a man, I'm at home. I'm watching this program, I'm being abused. I'm a young girl, an adolescent girl. I want to access services. I don't know where to go.
Okay.
Where do people go to at the moment, or who do I call? I know people often say these toll-free numbers, they constantly ring, you are never answered. People will talk on TV, on radio to say, get us anytime, 24/7, we are open. But when it comes to reality, that is not the situation on the ground. Where can somebody who's being abused now go to?
If someone is to call during working hours, or to actually go there in person in the event that they manage to pass through a police roadblock, the Adult Rape Clinic is at Paringatwa Group of Hospitals in Ward C9, and we're open we're trying to say within this period so that we minimize the people coming to the clinic. We're only seeing in the clinic survivors who have been raped within 72 hours, because these ones at least will do their HIV test, their pregnancy test, and we can give them medication. And then the survivors who have been raped outside the 72 hours, we're then giving out our phone numbers, and they can call our counselors or our nurses for a service. And then I can also maybe give you our numbers now.
Yes.
Okay. 0775 672 770. I'll repeat that number again. 0775 672 770. This number, we're available on WhatsApp, or you can call, or you can even send a text message.
Is it available 24/7?
This one is available 24/7.
Okay.
Maybe, of course, someone might go and have a tea break or something, but we then aim to say, can they call back?
Okay.
So if you call, then someone will call you back if you call on this number. Then we do have a toll-free number, and I appreciate what you're saying about toll-free numbers, but I'll give out the toll-free number anyway. Our toll-free number is 0800 4401.
So what would you say is your parting shot to Zimbabweans during this COVID era?
Okay. My parting shot is that lockdown is not consent to abuse people. Can people ask for consent? And then for women who have been abused, can they please report for services within 72 hours if possible?
Well, you have heard it from Rumbi. The lockdown, COVID-19 is not consent for abuse. Let's ensure that we are protected. And like what we've heard from the president, masks are now mandatory. Whenever you are going to a public place, let's always ensure that we put on our masks, and also let's ensure that we respect the social distancing. Until next week, it's goodbye.